us read today's passage, Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 to 20. Okay, let us read. When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. "Lord, have mercy on my son," he said. "He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire and into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him." "You unbelieving and perverse generation," Jesus replied, "how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me." Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed at that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" He replied, "Because you have so little faith. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." Are you with me? Yeah? Okay, here we have this story of Jesus' healing of a demon-possessed boy. Jesus, Peter, James, and John, they came back from the Mount Hermon. We learned about that story last week, right? They came back and then they saw the unusually huge crowd gathered together around the disciples. And then according to the account of Gospel of Mark, the disciples, they had discussion with the scribes. And then the people were whispering about the disciples around them. Yeah? Okay? And then a man came to Jesus. He said, "Jesus, please have mercy on my son. Okay? Because of a demon, he is suffering greatly. I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him." And Jesus was indignant suddenly. Why? It's really weird. Jesus was angry with the grief and anger. Jesus was saying that, "You unbelieving and perverse generation." Yeah? Whom is he talking to, Jesus? You know? Whom is he talking to here? Jesus is saying, "You unbelieving and perverse generation." Jesus is talking to his disciples. Jesus is calling them unbelieving and perverse generation. Do you see this word, perverse? Yeah? That Greek word has the meaning of being crooked. Being crooked. And then that exact word is appearing in book of Isaiah in chapter 40. At that point, God is giving the prophecy through the prophet Isaiah. When the time comes, okay, the Messiah will come. Before the Messiah comes, you need to make the way straight. You need to prepare the way straight. That word, straight, is exactly opposite to this word, crooked. Okay, those two concepts are appearing as the opposite concepts in the book of Isaiah. What does that mean? You need to make the way straight for the Messiah. Yeah, who did the job actually in the New Testament? John the Baptist. He was the one who made the way straight. What does it mean? Messiah likes the straightforward way, not the crooked one. So that we need to make the path, to make that road straight. That's not the meaning of it, right? When you read Isaiah chapter 40, making the way straight means, we can see that passage. Let me show you that passage here. So here, okay, verse 3 says, "A voice cries in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Then you see, what's the meaning of that? The highway. When you make that highway in the wilderness, the people of God, they will be invited to join that highway. They will walk through that highway towards what? Towards the Zion, the kingdom of God. That's the image the book of Isaiah is talking about. The people of God, they will walk through the wilderness on the highway, on the straight way. Okay? Still, we do not know what exactly it is, the straight way. Look at the continuing verses. Verse 6, it says, a voice says, cry. And I said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass. Then look at verse 7. It says, the grass withers, the flower fades. When the breath of the Lord blows on it, surely the people are grass. Look at verse 8. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever. The people who are walking on that straight way, they are the people who are confessing that the grass are faded, the flowers are withered, but only the words of God staying forever. The people who are walking on the straight way is the people who are confessing that God is only the source of life, not the people, not the worldly things, not the glory of the people, but God is the source of our glory, our life. So let's come back to our passage in Matthew chapter 17. Jesus is criticizing, blaming his disciples as the crooked people. You are walking on the crooked way, not the straight way. Why? Even though these disciples have been following Jesus for 3 years, almost 3 years, but still they are walking on this crooked way. They're still looking for the honor, fame, the authority, or the power when they will get when Jesus' kingdom is established. That kind of Messiah they are expecting. When Jesus is sitting on his throne, we will enjoy that power and authority all together. That was their true intention, deepest in their heart. And then they hated, they feared the persecutions or hardships, right? When Jesus foretold his sufferings and death, they couldn't accept the fact. You are the Messiah. How can the Messiah be suffered and be killed? We cannot accept it. We remember Peter's reaction to Jesus' foretelling of his death. He rebuked Jesus. No way! God will not allow you to do that. You see? These disciples, still they are walking on that crooked way. They are crooked generation. And then Jesus casted out the demon out of this boy. And then now, after all those crowd left Jesus, those disciples secretly, they came to Jesus in private and then asked, why couldn't we drive it out? They were wondering, why couldn't we drive the demon out of the boy? Why? Because when we read chapter 10 of Matthew, Jesus gave them the authority already. They actually casted out demons. They powerfully ministered with Jesus, right? But here, they couldn't cast out the demon out of the boy. So they were wondering, why Jesus? You know what? And a doctor, in order to be a specialist, they need to study, they need to practice at least 10 years, right? At least for 10 years, they study hard, they practice. And then after those years of training, they receive the competence. And then what happens next? They can heal, they can treat the patients by their own competence at any time. So now let's go back to our disciples' case. They asked, why couldn't we drive it out? And Jesus says, reply, look at that. Jesus said, because you have so little faith. Does it mean that the disciples need more training? Okay? They hadn't become the specialists yet, so they needed more study, more training. Is that the meaning of it? Yeah? Okay, but here, what Jesus is talking about, the little faith, we have to think about the meaning of it. Unlike the doctors who are dealing with the patients by their own competence, disciples, they are healing people. They are providing lives to their neighbors, not by their own competence, by their faith. When they have this faith, okay, when they rely on Jesus, relying on Jesus, the life granted by God, okay, flows to other people, to their neighbors. So it's totally different. And then look at this. When Jesus is talking about their faith, so little faith, Jesus is talking about this image, the mustard seed. Mustard seed. You know what? At that time, at Jesus' time, when people is talking about the small things, they usually use that image of mustard seed. Mustard seed was not the smallest one, but in their culture, in their customs, when they are talking about the small things, they are usually talking about the mustard seed. Now Jesus is talking about your faith is so little, just like a mustard seed. What is he talking about? It reminds us the parables of the sowing in chapter 13 of Matthew. Okay? God actually sowed the seeds on us. So in our hearts, we have the seed of faith. It's like a mustard seed, but it should not remain, okay, they're little like the mustard seed. It should be grown, right? The mustard seed should be grown so that when the mustard seed is sprouted and then grown, what happened next? It will bear fruit. 30-fold, 60-fold, and even 100-fold of fruit they will bear. It's not from themselves. It's from the seed itself. It's from the life granted by God. But when it grows, it will overflow to their neighbors. 30-fold, 60-fold, even 100-fold. They can save the people. They can provide this life to their neighbors. But according to that parable, what happens? Okay? Something prevents from this mustard seed to grow. We learned about the rocky ground. Yeah? The mustard seed tried to sprout it and then grow, and then what happened? The soil is rocky. So it interferes with the mustard seed taking roots. Right? What does it mean? The rocky soil. We learned about the parable. The disciples, the believers, they have the fear about the persecutions. When they have the faith in Jesus, they can encounter all those hardships and even persecutions because of their faith. They loses their faith. That mustard seed, our faith, cannot grow any longer. How about the second soil, the thorny ground? Yeah, the mustard seed grows, the faith tries to grow, and what happened? The thorns are making that seed choke. Jesus explained the meaning of the parable. All those worldly concerns and pleasures of this world will choke that mustard seed. Okay? While we are living in this world, we are tempted by all those worldly things. Right? Yeah, we have so many concerns, worldly concerns. So we begin to focus on the worldly things which seem to solve our problem right away. So when we are concentrating all those worldly things, our faith is choked, withered, just like the thorny ground. Okay? Then this is my last question. Before we wrap up our today's message, this is my last question. How can this little faith grow? Yeah? How can this little faith to grow so that the faith can move the mountain from here to there? Yeah? Even in our account in Matthew, we do not have the sentence, yeah, at the end of this story. But when you look at Mark chapter 9, the other account, the same story, but in the Mark's gospel, you can see this word of Jesus. Let me read that word. Okay. This is Jesus' last word. Mark 9:29 says that this kind can come out by nothing except prayer. Jesus is saying, Jesus is pointing out what is the secret. Okay, Jesus is giving the answers to their question. Why couldn't we drive it out? Because you didn't pray. Okay, remember, the source of this life is not ourselves. We cannot give that life for ourselves, just like the trained specialist. We are not the trained specialists. We are Jesus' followers, disciples. What we do is our faith, little mustard seed, should grow, right? And then the mustard seed will grow and bear the fruit 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100-fold. How can it be happening? Because we need to ask for God's grace every moment. We need to go to the throne of grace every moment of our life, even today, so that our rocky ground, our thorny ground should be turned into good soil, so that that seed, the mustard seed, can grow up to bear fruits for our neighbors. Yeah? So let's wrap up our message today. Now we are learning about these disciples' shameful sin, right? They have been following Jesus even for 3 years. They actually learned from Jesus, directly from Jesus, but they showed this shameful, sin. But we learned about the key. What is the key? Yeah? We need to go to Jesus. We need to go to God even this moment. We need to ask for His grace and wisdom to know all those people are grasses and their glory are just like flowers. They will be faded, withered, but only the words of God stays forever. Okay, let us confess that in front of God all together. Let us pray.